That could be part of it. I think the greater issue is this.
I mean, these are not dreamers. These are realists, and they're thinking, we don't know what we're getting into if they overthrow the Saudi royal family.
Well, I think that's part of it. I think there are some people in the State Department, and maybe some people in the administration, who are thinking, look, if this revolution genie really gets out of the bottle, then American allies may be hurt much worse than American opponents. But frankly, I think the bigger issue is this. This idea of regime change or regime alteration is so revolting, is so anathema to Barack Obama and to his people because of Iraq, because of Afghanistan, that he doesn't want to do anything for his base of support. He doesn't want to do, he can't do anything that even remotely resembles what George W. Bush did. I mean, he had to swallow a big pill this week, and his supporters had to swallow a big pill this week when he decided that, yes, we're going to go ahead with the military commissions in Guantanamo Bay. That's 2 years after he pledged to close down Guantanamo Bay in 1 year.
Well, there's a whole string of things he's had to continue from the Bush administration that, as a candidate, he said would be done away with right away. We're going into the third year, and they've had to continue more than they've changed. By the way, people used to say of Barack Obama that in the Senate he often voted present. Right. Is he voting present on the Middle East? You say yes.
Yeah,
what do you say, Yami?
I wrote a column about that.
I don't even think he's voting present. I think he left with the Democrats out of Wisconsin.
He's a flea bagger. Oh, man. All right.
I mean, seriously.
Jade, is he voting present? President present?
I haven't followed, so I can't say.
What about this James Clapper? This guy is quite a character. The director of national intelligence. He's had a series of faux pas, but yesterday had to be the worst. In front of a congressional committee, he volunteered the opinion that the Libyan rebels would fail. And as Colonel Peters told us last hour, it's fine to think that. It's fine to say that to the president behind closed doors. It's really kind of appalling that he says it in public. And the White House immediately disavowed him as if he was some wacko out on the sidewalk. That's not what we think. He's wrong. I mean, what's going on with this guy? People keep defending him to me, saying, "Oh, he's very intelligent. You're not being fair to him." I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think we have enough issues within the last year. I mean,
is he senile? Is there something wrong with him? I mean,
I don't know. You know that interview on ABC when he didn't know
about that morning's terror
about the terror plot in London. That really should have been the last straw, and that's his job. He's supposed to inform the president about what's going on.
He's the big picture guy,
and a plot that had been exposed on in the international media 6 hours earlier, he didn't know about.
Yeah, and the explanation there was he hadn't been briefed. Well, I'm not. Nobody briefs me either.
I just locked in a
I look at the news
tube somewhere.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's very damaging to not only not be backing these forces, but then to have a major U.S. politician come out and say, you guys are probably doomed. I mean, you know what you were saying, Yami, that pretty much makes it impossible for them to think we're going to be there.
Yeah, it's demoralizing. I mean, this is their war. We're sitting back. We're just watching. We're spectators. I mean, the superpower is being a spectator, and we're waiting. But for someone to come out and say, that's it, you're done. It's like going to a football game and the parents are all going, that's it, you're done. You know, throw in the towel.
Don't play the second half.
Yeah, go home.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but in a way, I guess he was telling the truth. I mean, I guess he said something that they must think. This must be the prevailing attitude.
But they remember Hillary Clinton also said the Mubarak government is stable and isn't going anywhere. And they were wrong about that. I don't think these people have a clue what's going on in the Middle East, and that's why they don't want to go out on a limb.
Is there... You brought up an interesting point, Jonathan, which is they seem to want to do the opposite of everything that Bush did. Is this again an example of they just sort of... They're obsessed with not appearing to be neocons or whatever the term is?
I think so.
So we're going to do the opposite. Even if it doesn't make sense and we can't explain it, we're going to do the opposite.
You know, one of the real ironies of the first 2 years of the Obama administration was that Bush had ramped up U.S. assistance to civil society groups in Egypt,
right?
Non-governmental groups, grassroots democratic groups in Egypt that were opposed to the Mubarak regime, were not Islamist, were not religious, were secular groups that were trying to build institutions for secular opposition to the government. The first 2 years of the Obama administration, the State Department slashed those funds by 80 or 90% to those groups, and then ultimately gave the Mubarak government a veto power over where the money could go.
Right.
So, I mean, we had no influence, we had no connection with these groups. In the long run, in all these countries, I think we're on the wrong side of history. If we're aligned with dictators and kings, I mean, look at our history. It makes no sense for the United States. We fought a revolution for independence against a dictator, against a king, someone who claimed authority from the divine right of kings.
If you're a politician who's thinking, what is this going to mean to the American pocketbook, and your fear is higher gas prices because of instability, then you're not going to be all dreamy about democracy.
It's going to happen anyway. I mean,
I know you're right, but I'm just saying I think this is Chicago politics. All politics is local. All politics is the pocketbook. We don't want Yami paying $5 a gallon for gasoline, because you know what? When she's doing that, she won't say, well, it's okay because they're getting democracy. She'll say, I'm going to vote for somebody else in 2012.
If for the last 20 years we had been working in all these countries with the opposition groups and with pressuring our allies to allow a legitimate opposition to develop, not just the Islamic opposition, but a legitimate secular opposition to develop in these countries, we wouldn't be in the position.
We did this in Eastern Europe during what was known as Glasnost.
Exactly.
We were making nice with Gorbachev, and we were undermining all of his satellites through our embassies and through our efforts, and that's why those countries love the United States.
And we were highlighting the plight of the refuseniks
yes.
and the opposition members who had been thrown in the Gulag. And we don't do that in the Islamic world. We don't do that in the Middle East.
We did it without firing a shot.
Right.
We did not have to go to war in Europe. We didn't have to fire a shot. And we wound up with a number of very friendly U.S. Governments in the former Eastern Europe.
And we ought to be doing that not only in Egypt, but also in Syria and in Iran and in Libya. We ought to be working. This isn't about giving them guns. It's about giving them information. It's about giving them the means of communication when the government wants to cut off their smartphones or cut off access to the internet, giving them the ability to work around. Back in the 80s, the big tool for the opponents in Eastern Europe was the fax machine. Mm-hmm. We gave them fax machines so that they could send documents around, and cassette tapes. That was what helped bring down the Iron Curtain. And now we've got the internet, we've got all these tremendous means of communication, and we're just a spectator on the sidelines. So we're not helping legitimate groups. We have to be worried who's going to come out on top in Egypt or in Libya. We don't know who's going to be the strongest group. We shouldn't be in that position. We should have our friends in the secular opposition.
When you have to sit at a UTSA professor's home in Stone Oak to watch how he gets information from the east side of Tripoli to the west side of Tripoli because they've been cut off, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. I mean, yes, and I agree with you. There are things that we could do without going there to help them out. But to sit in that living room watching my professor from 20 years ago sending information and coordinating and helping people was insane.
Yeah.
It just threw me for a loop.
If he can do it, imagine with the U.S. government.
Oh my gosh.
All right, we're back with more Gang of Four. It is 10:44. We go into the newsroom for Karen. Our coverage continues of the Japanese earthquake and tsunami waves just starting to touch the west coast of the United States, although nothing of the magnitude that struck Japan, and that seems to have caused a great deal of the death toll over there that's in the hundreds and expected to grow. An 8.9 earthquake that was yesterday afternoon, local Japanese time. Now it's the middle of the night there, and so some of the damage probably not yet known. We're just getting word now of a passenger train, the East Japan Railway, that was running along that coast with an unknown number of people on board. That train never arrived at its next station, and its whereabouts are not known. We saw large ships and vessels tossed about like toys in the waters off the Japanese coast. There are reports of hundreds of bodies in some locations. And this is the least densely populated part of Japan, although, as we were saying earlier, there's no part of Japan that isn't well populated. So while that happens, the tsunami has apparently moved through the Hawaiian Islands with little or no damage or effect, including no danger for a group of Alamo Heights High School students who were on a band trip, and they are all fine. We ascertained that a couple of hours ago. Now the West Coast waiting to see what it will get in terms of tsunami waves, and the world waiting to see what Japan will be able to do and what it will need. By all accounts, it will need a lot of help, in the United States pledging that. We're going to hear from President Obama later this hour in a news conference where he'll address this, as many other things.